Force on Force features the largest and strongest outdoor military organization in the country. These are the men and women who make it possible to enjoy the freedom to hunt and fish. It is with great pride that we bring you Force on Force podcast, coming to you from the Force on Force Talk.
Hey, welcome to the Force on Force podcast. We're here in the Force on Force Talk. It's been a couple weeks. We enjoyed our last podcast with Wade Middleton, Carico TV, Americana Outdoors. In fact, they're actually fishing the college national championship right now as we speak. I talked to Todd Messa, the coach of West Point, today, and just checking up on the cadets from West Point. Wish I was there, but as we mentioned in that podcast, it's graduation time, and I got a couple of special guests here with me. We all kind of understand that because we all have graduation things going on with our families right now. But we thought it'd be pretty cool to bring the guys on, Matt Pekar and Brent Hill, the season 14 Force on Force champions, and kind of talk about their season in the show and just kind of how it all went down. How's it going, guys?
Man, doing good. Matt, how are you?
I'm good, man. It's great to hear you guys. Thanks for the opportunity to do this. Yeah, doing great. But like John said, crazy with graduation and the school year. So this is a well needed break from everything else.
Hey, first of all, we'd be remiss all the times that we're gone and everything else if we did screw up and miss graduation or miss a dinner or something like that because of all the stuff that we have to be gone for on deployments and everything else when we were in service. And so I think that's why it's important to kind of take advantage of those opportunities along the way,
Yeah,
that's a real good point.
Literally, I came out of the field today, right? So, and then right back at it, graduation tomorrow. So life is busy right now for sure.
Yeah, as we record this, I'm going to get up tomorrow, drive to Clarksville, Tennessee, and home with the 101st. James is graduating. And so we're squeezing this in. But the question I want to ask you guys is, we filmed in like first or second week of February. The show just aired last week. And how much did it kill you guys to keep that under wraps?
Oh, man. Yeah, it was tough because, everybody's, especially as the episode started airing, everybody's like, well, what happened? What happened? And like, man, I started telling people I signed an NDA. Don't ask me anymore.
I just said, hey, you got to watch the show. It's going to continue to get better. And it did, right? And, ultimately we ended up the champs. But man, it was tough. It was no joke.
Yeah. It's a tough deal. Like the first year I won, it was almost a year for the time that we filmed till it aired. So we had to keep it under wraps for almost a year. So
yeah, the flash to bang on that's a lot better than, just a couple months, but yeah, same thing Matt was doing. I was like, you got to watch the show. Just stay tuned every week, watch the show, and we'll talk about it when it's all over with.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting how all that kind of works out, and because we are doing a TV show and trying to keep the suspense because there's no need for people to watch if they know what's going to happen, and we want to keep viewers interested. And I will say this is one of our best seasons we've done in the 14 years. I think another one was the year that I bring up painful memories to Brent. I'm going to ask him in a second here. He's been so close, but that time you and Seymour got real close. That was a real good season. I'm a Force on Force because there was a couple epic battles between me and Cole during that year, and then you guys in the finals, so
yeah.
A lot of good references back to that. But with that question, Brent, I got to ask, we're going to talk about the days and all that stuff with you guys, but you, how much does this mean to you up front, just because you were close,
Yeah, being so close and then finally making it happen. And then, my tournament history over the last 20 years, I've won some big tournaments, but I've also been the bridesmaid a lot, right? And it's hard to win one of these, and it's even harder to win one on TV. And that's a long drive from Oklahoma to Florida. And you think about it all the way there, and you think about it while you're there, and then you think about it on the way home. It means a lot. It truly means a lot. And man, I wouldn't change it. It actually means more because of the second place finish I had 4 or 5 years ago in Texas to come all the way to Florida to a lake I've never even seen. Always wanted to fish, get paired up with Matt, and we figured it out. And it means a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of special. I don't think people kind of take how hard it is to win one with what the scenario we put you guys in. I was thinking about this today. I was actually cutting the grass, and I was thinking about how we were going to do the podcast. And a lot of what we do with the TV show is try to replicate what we do in combat or training or whatever. And so I think when we talk about that part, how hard it is to win one of these, it's that part where we take it in, let's say, that 4 hours that we put you guys in each and every time. It's almost like a mini stick slaying situational exercise for those who don't know what we're talking about. But we replicate that stress and almost encourage you guys to fail along the way. Have you ever thought about it like that?
I mean, yeah, it's stress inoculation, right? So to not knowing who your partner is, to not knowing the times, the curveballs you threw us, the pairings, you don't know, and you got to react. And a lot of that goes back onto different branches of the service, military training, and how do you adapt and make those decisions, and try to overcome whatever obstacle is in front of you. And Matt and I talk about that every night, and sometimes even on the water, the situation, the scenario, what options we had, and which one was the best calculated decision.
Yeah, that's a hard thing for people to understand, because the time limit we put on you guys really amplifies that, and I think when you compress the time, everything speeds up there. Now, as we talk to Matt here, you got there in a different route. You're a task force guy, and really your story goes back to you kind of linked up with Sergeant Major Tagger, Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of, funny story actually. I was first introduced to Fourth on Fourth or Army Bass Anglers a couple years ago during the previous administration, and kind of got turned away a little bit in a sense, inadvertently. No big issue there. But it wasn't until 2022 that I decided to make the jump and become a boater and take the leap and try getting into these competitive tournaments as a boater. And in order to do that, you need a boat. And I just so happened to be scrolling through Facebook, and I saw Sergeant Major Tagger's posting for his boat, and I was like, man, not only is that an awesome wrap, but that boat is like fully rigged out. Like it was too good to be true. And then traveling down and meeting him and doing the transaction with the boat, and him talking to me about the organization and getting involved, and it was just an amazing kind of introduction through there. And he's been a huge mentor of mine, and kind of helped me meet all you guys and get involved. And then a different perspective than Brent. He's been doing this for a while. He's been to the force on force stuff before, and for me, I was coming in kind of blind and didn't really know what to expect. I thought I knew what competitive fishing was, but I had no idea what televised competitive fishing it was. We were really fortunate to have an amazing cameraman. Give a shout out to Colin. But he really made me feel comfortable, and Brent just kind of being there as the rock and kind of figuring stuff out and kind of mentoring me as we go through the process of the taping and the show, and kind of what to do, what not to do. But most importantly, I mean, he put the time on the water and found fish. And it was just an honor to kind of, be paired up with him and go through this process with him and ultimately culminate into being champions.
Yeah, I think that you talk about that fishing with a camera. I mean, I'm not going to ask Brent, because he and I talk about it. I just like to hear from the new perspective. Let's talk about that. How different is that?
It was, especially coming in kind of blind and being the first time. It was the first round. I mean, more nervous than a cat full, in a room full of rocking chairs. Like, what do I say? I don't want to sound stupid. You're constantly like checking yourself and trying to rehearse things before you say it. And Brent and I had talked before we got into the first round, and kind of like the scheme and maneuver, if you will, of well, let's talk about this. We'll have this conversation. I'll prompt you with this or whatever. But, constantly getting lost in like not trying to look stupid is really what was in my mind. And then kind of got comfortable as the first round kind of made its way through. And then subsequent rounds, at least I think I didn't look stupid, but kind of forgot about the camera and really got focused in the competition of it. And I think that really benefited us. And I think it made, selfishly, I'll say, I think it made for pretty good TV. But I will say, I don't know. Like there was a ton of great guys there and a lot of conversations about it, but Brent really was the calm amongst the storm for me. And, I don't think that I would have been able to act the way that I did or kind of go through that process had I been paired up with someone else.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I just asked that question because I say no matter what show we do, whether it's the hunting side or the fishing side, the minute you put a camera on everybody, it's a whole different deal. It's like the stress level like ratchets up. I mean, you think you got buck fever when you're shooting a deer normally. You put a camera on you, it just changes the whole perspective. You like, if I screw this up, everybody in the country's gonna see it, right? And so you're sitting there just stressing about it. So replicates that kind of piece of it. But you guys, had to go through 3 rounds of competition. We're going to talk about that. It started though, Brent, we talked about this a little bit in another podcast, was we had to decide what we were going to do to figure out who was going to fish in the morning or afternoon. And by the way, was shout out to Camp Mac down there at Lake Kissimmee, who put us up down there and gave us an awesome place to stay. And so in the Lake Wells area. And so had a very awesome setup, but part of this was it allowed you guys to practice, right? So unlike some seasons, we may tell you where to show up at, but we don't tell you the lake. I've done it both ways, right? But this way you got to practice a little bit, but there's going to be some kind of gamesmanship. Did you have any clue what you thought it was going to be before we started?
Nope, I didn't know. Because, I mean, I've been involved with the show either behind the scenes or on it several years. I thought it would probably be another flipping event or some kind of fishing related thing with a rod and reel casting. When you threw the trailer, get the boat ready to trailer competition on there, I just locked in. They picked me and I was like, all right. So I just got locked in. And I remember, the sequence that I go through every time that I, take a boat out of the water and get it ready to trailer. And I just went through my sequence.
Right.
And ended up winning it. And yeah, I picked the morning time. And I did that because I was watching the weather and I knew that afternoon was going to get a little rough out there. And I wanted to have the chance for Matt and I to go pick apart this one little spot that I found in practice I caught one bass out of it and it was a good one and I left it. And I tried to find other spots like that. And, that's why I picked the morning time after that trailer and get the boat ready for trailer and competition.
Yeah. I was kind of shocked because normally that time of year you want to fish later in the day just because the days were warming throughout the day. That water temperature warms up later in the day.
Water temperature was only going to go up like 2 degrees and it was going to get super windy.
Yeah.
And I wasn't worried about it. And that's just, I was trying to think selfishly, how can I try to, get a leg up? Because you have to try to figure out those little things to get a leg up in that competition like that.
Yeah. And I've seen it both ways. I've seen where the afternoons work better starting in the morning because, and I'll just ask you, because you can't win the thing in the first round, but you can also set yourself better up for the subsequent rounds in the first round. So,
yeah,
I guess my question, because sometimes I've seen it with fishing in the afternoon or the morning, because here's what happens. If you fish in the morning, you're going to go back out in the morning the next morning, right? But then you've not fished in the afternoon at all, and the other team has. So
the only good bite that I got in practice. Now, mind you, when I rolled into Florida, there was snow on the ground. They had just opened the highway.
Yeah.
The water temperature on Lake Kissimmee dropped from 64 degrees to just under 50.
Right.
Those bass did not know what to do. They don't see that. That was one of the coldest cold fronts they've had in decades. Those fish were a mile offshore. And if you've never been to Kissimmee, if you're listening to this, you've never been to Kissimmee, like the average water depth is 4 feet. So when you're in 3 or 4 feet, you're out deep.
Yeah.
But those fish, it didn't matter what the water temperature was until later that third round. It didn't matter because they were so cold and so shocked. They were just stuck and hiding in those hydrilla clumps and those lily pad fields.
Yeah.
And that's where we found them at.
And that's kind of interesting. There's things like that you kind of take into account. You don't know what you don't know till you're out in the water. And to the listeners, like Brent's breaking it down pretty well because, I'm hosting the show, but I'm not paying nearly as close attention to what those guys are, right? Because I'm worrying about production and everything else. They're in tune to the water temperature. So when you hear me talk about, probably it kind of surprised me that they chose the morning bite. It's because the things you just said, Brent, right there, because you're seeing that stuff the real time in the water. But in subsequent years, I've seen like choosing the afternoon bite that it made a difference.
Yeah, and Matt and I talked about it. After the first round, we said, I think it's going to be the same tomorrow. We're going to expand the area a little bit and maybe try to move up shallower because it did get a couple degrees warmer that afternoon.
Right.
They were in the same general area, but we knew if we made it through the second round, we were going to fish in the afternoon, potentially in the afternoon, if the weather was still good for the championship. And we knew it was going to be on fire.
Right.
I mean, Matt and I talked about that. We were like, it's going to fire off. They're going to continue moving down this highway that we found to go to the bank and spawn.
Yeah.
And they did. And it worked out. It doesn't always work out like that.
Yeah. So Matt, were you nervous about that at all, going in the morning versus the afternoon, or were you locked in on the morning thing?
No, I was locked in with whatever Brent said at that point. I really, we had the opportunity to pre-fish the day before after he had already pre-fished and he found that area. We covered water. I don't know how much water we covered, but we were all over the place. We fished docks, we fished other grass areas, a whole bunch of stuff. And man, we just could not reproduce the bite that he was on. So, at that point, just like, in the military, you got to trust your leader. And at that point, Brent was the guy. And he said, hey, this is what we're doing. And after the first round, it kind of solidified it. And we both agreed, as Brent said, it was only going to get better. And the intricacies and just the details that he was able to key in on and kind of taking into account, the weather and the wind and that full spectrum of really understanding the area and the, other factors involved, I was all in 100%.
Yeah. So that can be a dynamic in itself there. It's like if the two guys don't gel real well together, the teams particularly that I've seen do really well, they've gelled together pretty well. That's important that you trust like each other. Really, like it's almost like putting together, a little group of paratroopers, just like we talk about all the time. Like you don't trust each other along the way, it makes a huge deal. But as we break and talk about the first round of the competition, so you guys drew against Steve Jarrett and Michael from Army Redfish. You guys were paired to go against them. Were you guys any nervousness going into that? Because knowing that, Steve is from Florida. He lives in St. Louis now, but he was from that area of Florida,
Yeah. No, I definitely took that into account, knowing Steve, but I'm pretty sure I told you, and I'm gonna go ahead and apologize, Steve, but I didn't care if I won or not any other round. All I wanted to do was beat him. And so I was super focused, and Matt and I had a game plan and we ran with it. But I wouldn't say I was nervous. I was anxious because I knew that at any moment he could probably catch a good one.
Yeah.
Because he's fished it for so long. He loves throwing that freaking worm, and I'll do it if I have to, but I like to power fish. So you never know. You can catch an 8, 9, 10 pounder out there, and that's game time. And we just didn't have giant weight. We squeaked by and had enough, but I just wanted to beat Steve, and I know Matt wanted to go to the second round, and Yeah, there was some nerves. There was some definite nerves and anxiousness that went along with that first round for me. I'm sure Matt was. I mean, I think he kind of alluded to it earlier, the camera. But as we started catching them and we got a limit, I think there was a little bit of calm in the boat, and I think we even said it, if I remember right, on that first episode. I think we got this. We did our jobs. We executed. We put 5 in the boat, and that was our goal: put 5 in the boat, and then just go from there. So it ended up working out.
Yeah. So when you talk about like that part, just wanting to beat Steve, and I'll ask this question. It is kind of the way I look at it. Part of it is when I went to Texas and won, it's like you're coming from an entirely different place, and there's no feeling like going into somebody's backyard and showing them that you can dominate them. Is that kind of the way you feel about it?
Not only that, but I did not want to let an Air Force guy beat the Army team. I didn't want to do that. And, so yeah, he got beat, and I felt good about it.
I got Matt's over there laughing. What's funny about it, Matt?
Well, this is my first introduction to a lot of these guys, and immediately meeting Steve. I mean, he's a personality.
Yeah.
And I know there's some backstory and history, and for me, I was hyper focused on the first round of not looking like an idiot, but I looked at every round and every competitive team that we were going against as just another hurdle.
Yeah.
Right. It's and that's the cool thing about fishing and the dynamic that we see in Force on Force is it doesn't matter who you're fishing against, especially on a fishery like Kissimmee where like Brent said, there's 8-10 pounders could be the next cast and really be a game changer. It's you have to fish against yourself almost and fish clean. We were really fortunate with the pairing that we got and the trust that we had amongst each other. And, we gelled really well and we were able to kind of execute, as Brent said. But, I don't ever look at, well, I'm competing against so-and-so. Now, of course, there's that, military branch, competitiveness of Army versus Air Force or Navy or whatever it is. And of course, Army is always going to rise to the top. But, it's for me personally, and I do that in my own competitive tournaments that I fish here in Maryland, is I'm not fishing against anybody else but myself because I need to execute the plan that I have going forward. And that's kind of what I had in my mentality after I got over the hurdle of being having a camera and not looking like an idiot.
Well, we did look like idiots when we didn't have a net out, and
that was a tough one. I was waiting for Sean to bring that up. Yeah,
Sean was bring it up. I was going to bring up that, and you mentioned fishing clean. You said you had a good feeling, but I don't know that you had a good feeling when you came in and you'd lost that fish.
Man, you set that up great, Sean. Yeah.
I mean, when you lost that fish at that moment, what did you think? I mean, realistically, I mean, that's a big fish, and that's kind of a game changer in a 4-hour tournament.
It was, and it was the same spot that I caught the 8-pounder in practice. The exact same spot, not the lily pad, but the exact same, probably 30-foot area.
Yeah,
there was a single lily pad stem out there that had hydraulic clump on it, and I told Matt and Colin was our camera guy. I said, in Oklahoma, if you're ever fishing a lake and there's a single stick up, you have to throw at it. And I called it. I said, I'm going to throw this lily pad. I'm going to catch a 5-pounder. I did. And I hooked it. And, man, it came out of the water a couple times. And we didn't have the net out. And it came off right at the boat. And I almost broke my rod. I was a little fired up because I knew if that could have sealed the deal for us. So that boat ride, that 30-minute boat ride back, it was a little bit stressful for me thinking about, did that fish just cost us? Am I about to drive 16 hours home because of a missed fish? But it ended up working out in our favor. So,
well, it actually proved to be pretty close, and Steve and them lost a fish too when I went back and watched it, and it could have been a difference. Like, how much would you have been mad at yourself if that had been the case?
Oh, I don't even know. I can't describe that. I mean, we lost a couple good fish, and when Seymour and I lost at Athens.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago, still thinking about that. So, man, those fish misses and those opportunities, you don't get those very often, but when you do, you got to try to capitalize on them. And that was just one that came off. It was a good hook set, everything. But yeah, that would have haunted me for a long time.
You might have had to go get some counseling over that one.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, trust me. I that's what happened. That went on with Seymour and them. Like I broke that 4.5, probably 4.5 pounder off on that drop shot, and it was a difference in the event. I mean, and that's why you were fishing against Cole in the finals and not us. And and I had that West Point cadet with me, and it just you can't like you're so mad. I mean, at that point, it's like, oh man, But I mean, I think the best part was being able to set you guys up when you get back there, and you that split moment. I saw the look in your eye when you're thinking that it maybe had sent you home. It was like, to be able to get that out of you was a little bit of fun part for me. So, that was a good deal. So
well, and that's something you did really well this year is that nobody knew. There was hardly any dock talk or you get back to the bank because everybody, even if you had them or not, they're saying we caught them.
Yeah.
And the suspense was there not only for the show, but for us. We didn't know. I didn't even know, when we won. And we can talk about. I'm sure we'll get.
Yeah,
we'll
get to that. But
we didn't know. Matt and I did not know. We were okay. I mean, we caught them, but was it good enough? When we were idling back in the canal.
Yeah, and that's a long idle coming down through there when you're waiting to come back and figure out how it's done. So that there's that whole thing into it, but y'all connected on round one. So you guys are going to go out for round two, and you guys, David Nelson and I'm out of the brain, Chad and Chad Cohen. You guys are going to go fish against them. What's interesting thing about them, they caught the most weight of the first round of all 4 teams. And so what are you guys thinking that night as you get ready for the next day? You're drawing.
Yeah. So, man, they were talking smack, and that's fine. And we might have said some stuff back. I don't know, a little bit, but Matt and I retied everything, and him and I sat down and we looked at the C map on the Lowrance HCS Pro 16, and we just kind of looked at that area some more.
Yeah.
And then we started talking about, hey, what do you think? And we made a game plan, and it ended up working out. So
the best part about this is I get to be stress free when it comes to watching you guys stress out, because I've been there, done that. I'm enjoying it, sitting back, me and Archer just chilling at night after we get stuff done with the camera guys and stuff, and watching you guys kind of stress and talk smack back and forth. And you got then you got Matt and Mike Schnupp on the other side. They're I mean, you got to think that they're probably trying to talk smack to who they don't want to fish against in the finals. I mean, believe it or not,
they were pretty secretive.
Yeah.
They were, and Mike is very strategic, so he was leading people astray.
Yeah.
He was doing some stuff on purpose.
Yeah.
And, here's the deal. And Sean, you've known me for a long time. I'm going to tell you exactly how I'm catching them.
Yeah.
But you got to go on what bait. I'll even give you a bait. I don't care. You still have to go out there and do it.
Well, I think the big part, nobody believed you're using the active target to do it with too. They were looking at you like you're stupid. I knew that's what you were doing. I remember sitting back, and before they even told me, I was like, hey, I guarantee he's using active target to find those hydrilla clumps and stuff.
That's exactly what we were doing.
Mm-hmm. And so the problem is when you're doing something.
That second round, we knew where those bigger clumps were that were holding the majority of the fish, so we would rotate it.
Well, the thing is when you're doing something like that, people you can tell them the truth, they don't believe you because they don't. Here's the thing, there's a lot of guys who just don't do that. But if you're a steward of the sport, you probably heard me talk about this on the podcast a couple podcasts ago. I've studied the history of sport, but if you study going to Florida in January, February timeframe, that's the key right there. I don't care what lake it is in Florida. Find those clumps of hydrilla, right?
Yep. And when Kissimmee was announced, I started doing a significant amount of research, map study, topographical maps, getting on my C map, highlighting areas, going back to tournament results, all the stuff I would do for a standard tournament that I'm going to fish.
Yeah.
But obviously, driving on the way there, thinking about executing, and I thought it was going to happen a certain way, and it ended up being totally opposite. But the vibrating jig was definitely one of my key things that I was going to do. I knew I was going to do that.
So you guys go out in that second round against Chad and David, and you guys catch them, but not like you did the day before,
No, we caught a couple more pounds heavier.
Oh, that's right, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
I remember what it was now. You guys caught a couple.
We only caught 5, I think, Matt. Right? We
Yeah.
only had 5.
Yeah, I think it was a slower bite, but better quality.
Yeah, I guess where I got confused. What happened was that Matt and Mike caught a big sack. That's what threw me off. Because I remember thinking.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm thinking. Right. So I'm thinking because I know what you guys don't know. Right. I know what the other competitors have in both pairings going out, right? So there's part of the gamesmanship to this is I saw to people this all the time when I did it. You're going back-to-back rounds on day 2, right? So if you win, you're going right back. You got to know that if you go out in the semifinal round, how much do you lean on your fish versus how much you don't lean on them? How much do you think you need to get by if you save some for the finals, or do you just want to make it to the finals? Did that thought process ever go through any one of your minds?
No, because Matt and I, we talked about it, and I'm sure Matt can, attest to this. We knew we were getting more fish coming in.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that it was a highway because of how far they went offshore because of that major cold front. We were dissecting them coming back in. We're intercepting them coming back in.
Yeah.
And we were continuously expanding that area, almost like doing a figure 8. And the area was big. It was a big area. And we were just continuously getting more and more clues to the puzzle with every fish catch. And then it started clicking. And, Matt, from your perspective, did you kind of see how that was happening?
Yeah, 100%. The two things that, well, the first regarding this specifically, after we finished the first round and you and I sat down, we were both 100% in agreement that, this was only going to get better. So I don't think there was ever a concern about burning fish or burning the spot, because exactly like you said, those fish were moving back up in and ultimately into their spawning areas, since they got pushed off with that weather. And then, on top of that, what made me feel comfortable is how keyed in you were on the clumps and using the active target. That really made me feel 100% comfortable, because that's exactly what I'm doing, up in the Potomac River, right now as the emerging grass comes up. And so it's like, okay, cool. I understand that pattern. I understand what you're doing. And I'm in 100% agreement with you that this area is only going to get better based off the conditions and as it starts to warm back up, and it really proved to be true. So there wasn't a concern from my part at all.
Yeah, I think that's something to think about. So you guys go out and catch them in round 2, and Chad and them, they don't catch a fish, but they do a good job keeping it close to the vest, right? They'll let you guys know what they had when they come back in. So we play a little bit of fun with you guys, and they end up going home, and you guys go into the finals. So it's on TV, man. We make it look like it's like 7 different days, but we're gonna turn and burn you guys, right? Because we get Mike and Matt coming in and off their semifinals. Like, how hard is it to get reset like that again?
I don't know. I wouldn't say it's hard. I think it's just you got to have a priority list of what you need to get done. What needs to be retied? Am I going to change things up? Matt and I had already agreed that we were going to go back and continue to pick apart that area. We thought, you never know what fish are really doing, but we thought that they were moving in. There's more fish coming. So that was a positive mindset that we had. The retying, making sure you're drinking water, staying hydrated, all those little things. Check your prop. That way you didn't hit any gators, whatever. All these things to get back and get ready to quickly reset and go back out there with another, 4 hours and 20 minutes time limit on a giant body of water.
Yeah. How about you, Matt? This is the first time you ever done that. Brent done it a couple of times.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. It's, because you're so locked in and you kind of breathe for a second and say, okay, we got through that round. But then you're like, oh crap, we're going against, two really competitive guys, and they're catching them, and we got to go back out there and do it. But it goes back to the military training, and you key on that a lot, Sean, of kind of muscle memory, and it's just a continuation of an evolution. So reset, get your gear right, drink water, and let's go for the next round.
It really is.
And
I didn't mean to cut you off, but almost is like that
no,
military training. Like it's almost like getting ready to go back out on mission again. Like you come back in and knowing that you might have to roll right back out again. Very, very similar to that,
Well, and the more times you do things, the more confident you get. We had confidence. We were confident that we were doing the right thing. So we had a positive mental mindset.
Yeah. And I don't think,
and that's big in fishing. Even if you're probably not doing the winning thing, but you're confident in it, you're gonna go out there and have a positive mindset.
Oh, I agree.
Absolutely.
I think we probably understand it more than the average fisherman or civilian out there because we had to do it for so many years, right? That's just trained into us, right? Where your mind goes, your body will follow, right?
Mm.
We've heard that like gazillion times through training, right?
Oh yeah.
So you get that, positive mental attitude, false motivation. You get out there and you get things going. So I wish we could show that a little bit more, because we do the 7 days, but that's some of the stuff that I love talking about behind the scenes, like how that relates to our training, the things we've been through, because I can tell you multiple times in combat, there's things that you come back in, but you only breathe in for like a second because you may have to roll right back out because your buddy may be in trouble, right? And that's a very good representation of how it is, that mental mindset, your body just relaxes that you just won, but oh man, I gotta go back again, And so that's why when it's all said and done, you're dead when you won. I tell people all the time, it's the most exhausted I've ever been in fishing, and I fished 2 and 3 day tournaments and nothing like that because nothing makes you exhausted as doing that, because so intense from one moment to the next in that short time frame. So you guys are going to go back and get fish against Mike and Matt. And now, as I set this up, my thoughts going into the final was I was seriously concerned about Matt and Mike because they caught a good sack in the semifinals. And I was wondering that part that we talked about burning fish, right? Because they had the same scenario. I don't believe I had to go back and check my brain notes real quick. I don't think they're around who they were fishing at. They did really well at all. And so it was almost like, did they really need to catch that much? Right. I think they had almost doubled you guys' weight in the semifinal round. So you guys here.
Yeah, we had a little over 7.5 pounds or something. I think they had 14.5.
Yeah. Yeah. So like you guys know they got a big sack, but so there's two things I think that I'm worried about. Are they going to be able to replicate that? Is it going to hold up? And two, is that going to spin you guys out? Right? Because you know that they caught such a big sack. So you got two different storylines going into finals. And Mike, even though he didn't live there, Mike is really one of these other Florida guys, right? He was stationed there for like 3 or 4 years right there in Orlando. So he fished Toho and Kissimmee a lot. How did that play getting ready for the finals, knowing who you had to go against?
It was a factor. Not only is, Matt the previous year's season 13 champion, and he's a good fisherman, great dude, good angler, but Matt's a semi-local, if you will. He's fished those lakes. He knows what to do. But I also felt really confident. Matt and I both talked about it. We felt really confident because we knew there was more coming, and the water had warmed up almost 5 degrees just in that day and a half period. We knew it was about to happen. And we were hoping that we were going to be there at the right time when it did. We were confident, but we also said, man, they've been catching them. And we just, hey, let's go do what we do. Let's continue to move around. And we decided to put the trolling motor on high and just continuously move That was the different thing we did that time. We really put the trolling motor on high, and we covered a lot of water in those high percentage areas and really hit those bigger clumps real quick, moved, hit another clump real quick, and it ended up really working out, and got some key bites. I think we had almost 3 pound average. I don't know how many times we called. I think we called 3 or 4 times there at the end. So it was good. It was good, but we didn't know again. We didn't know again because I knew they had that spot up there at the dam, and I told them I'm not going up there. I've never even been up there at the lock, at the Toho lock. And, when I go back and look at the footage, I think they burned some of those fish that were resident fish.
Yeah.
That stay in that area, So Matt, what do you think?
I think you're spot on, Brent. Immense credit and respect to Mike and Matt. Just saw, hearing what they had done through the previous rounds, they're absolutely well deserved to be in that championship round. And you and I had talked about it. It was going to be, a boxing match, and whoever came out on top was just going to have that, those better bites. I think we knew they were going to catch them, but we went in and executed and had that positive mental attitude and just went out and just hammered them and kind of, to me, the cool part was the culmination of seeing what you had found, but what we had, kind of agreed what was going to happen as the, days progressed and the water warmed. This fish continued to come in there and the quality got better. And, we fished really clean, I think, in the subsequent rounds after, we
didn't lose a single fish in round 2 or 3.
Well, that'd be because you got a hold of the net when you started.
We did, and we said that out loud a few times, and Matt cheated in on it.
Absolutely. And it was just that, kind of, put your nose to the grindstone and let's just get out there and get them. And we knew they were there, and we can only control what was in our 3-foot world. And fortunately, we were able to come out on top.
Yeah, I think your guys are spot on. I think if they had stuck, Mike and Matt had stuck down there on that other bite, they might have had a chance to be a different. I mean, it was an epic battle because it was not very much that separated you guys and them, right? It was really, really close in the finals.
Well, they wasted probably 50 minutes to an hour
running
all the way up there and then back to the canal. Camp back.
Yeah, that's a decision.
50 minutes of fishing time that you could have been on the trolling motor. And we weren't going to do that.
Yeah.
We wanted to maximize fishing time because we knew there was fish there, and we just knew they were coming. And
because they caught, because Mike caught a night. I mean, I think his first fish was like a 4.5 pounder or something like that. And he was catching some good qualities, and then it just kind of, he didn't have the overall quality. Him and Matt didn't have the overall quality across the 5 fish because I think their last 2, there was a little bit difference in those, and I think that was the difference in the thing. But the qualities wasn't there when they went back up to that dam, because it's not a place, as you talk about. We talk all the time in the fishing world. We want fish coming to you. That's not necessarily a place where fish keep coming to you. There, maybe if you're on Pickwick below the Wilson Dam, that happens, but not.
Well,
not there.
And I watched some of the footage, Sean, and I noticed, and even Mike said it. Man, I'm just slow rolling that chatterbait.
Yeah.
And we weren't. We were throwing a heavier one. We were throwing the jackhammer. We were throwing a heavier one, 3/4 ounce. And we were getting it purposely stuck. And we were fishing it fast.
Yeah.
And when we rip it out, that's when we get our key bites. So I don't know if that was a difference, but I think it was. I mean, it's those little minute details that sometimes get you more quality bites.
And Mike even said, man, he was reeling that thing really, really fast because he was so jacked up, he was hyped up, and he said he probably had needed to slow it down a little bit. So it made a difference. But, as we started to wind things down, I think this is really cool to kind of break down how this all happened. But we bring you guys back in and we bring you to the bank where we've done the other 2 rounds. And how cool was it to see all the people from Camp Mac there lined up along the bank?
Super cool. Matt and I were fired up, right?
Oh man, it was the culmination and just, coming in like an actual, a large tournament on one of the, big series, have an actual crowd and they're all cheering and clapping. I mean, what an experience.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to show that on TV, but that's something we had never done. We wanted to kind of involve the community in that piece of it and bring them in, get to talk to them, explain to them what goes on. But I kind of set you guys up even with that part of it. So how mad or frustrated were you when you guys are sitting in the boat, and we've done this 2 times before that we've gone through the process of me declaring the winner right there on the boat. You guys thought that's when it was getting, because we don't show this in the episode. This part, all they see in the episode is you guys back in the talk. But how do we?
I knew we were coming to the top.
He goes, so the listeners know, like, we're sitting there and I said, hey, you guys think we're going to crown the champion, but we're going to go to the talk right now. And just Mike and Matt's face and your Matt, everybody was like, they were just like ready to find out who it was. And we were going to make them drag it on a little bit longer so we could get that reaction out of them. How did you like that part of it?
I kind of knew that's what you were going to do. I mean, that was the right thing to do. And I kind of had an inkling that you were going to do that. So, and especially how close it was, so that was the right thing to do. And we were kind of leaning towards that. But man, again, you continuously kept us on our toes with a lot of the production stuff and not knowing and keeping secrets and all that stuff. So yeah, I didn't know. I was dumbfounded on a lot of different things.
Yeah. So we get you in to talk, and that moment I tell you, hey, you're the champions. How did that feel?
Relief. But I was shocked. I didn't know. I did not know. And I kind of didn't know what to say. I was fired up on the inside, but man, I didn't even know. And, Matt and I high-fived, hugged, and it was pretty cool, man. It was really cool. It still is cool, and it will always be an awesome memory that Matt and I got to share together with you in Florida. That was awesome.
Yeah. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. Like for, you guys talked about like, well, you starting in the boat into the talk, and, Brent kind of knew what was going to go on and stuff. I had no idea. That was my first time there. And I'm still kind of riding on a high, just, being in the final round, and, we had a really good round and it felt good, but we had no idea, Mike and Matt, were catching them and, in previous rounds. So, it was really a toss up. And, as we went into the talk, and, I think you set it up really well, with the kind of the AAR, if you will, without, weights and stuff like that. And up until your announcement, I was still kind of confused and perplexed. I'm like, what the heck, or what's going on here? And then the announcement and kind of very similar to Brent, just kind of a surreal feeling of such a significant and phenomenal experience culminating in raising that, trophy with Brent. It was just, still riding high on it.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool experience. In fact, I'm looking at the trophy right here in the office here in Kentucky, and it's just pretty cool to have that moment, because I'll never forget that moment for me when it happened. It's just really, really surreal moment, because it's really hard to win, because you got to win 3 rounds in a row. That means you got to fish perfect 3 times, and so it's a hard deal to do. And when it happens, man, it's just something special about it. And then to have the TV to kind of capture the moment, it's really, really cool piece of it, and to tell the story or part of it. And then you were able to see all the people from Camp Mac around there to watch you guys kind of celebrate. It was a cool experience that we had never had before, something we kind of threw in there that we wanted to do with that. And so I thought that was cool to be able to share that with them, because they had been such a good host to us down there. So as we close this out, any final thoughts from you guys? I know it's great talking to you guys, kind of breaking this down and letting the listeners kind of talk about how all that went down, because, there's a lot of untold stories that we don't get to tell in a 22-minute episode.
No, there's just a couple things. I mean, behind the scenes camaraderie, that's the thing about being in the military. And if you're a veteran, whether it's active duty, reserves, National Guard, no matter how long you served, or if you retired, or if you're still in, come check us out, because no matter what, I'm going to have something in common with you that you may not have in common with 99% of the population. So when we don't even know, the majority of us don't even know each other when we come to this event. It's picked randomly, and got to be a member of the Army Bass Anglers and Force on Force to get picked for that. But we all have our stories. We've all done something for the nation, for each other, for our branch, for our brothers and sisters. And it's so cool to get to hear each other's stories, where they're from, what they do, what they did in the military. And it's so important, because that's a lifelong friend and a battle buddy that you'll have forever.
Yeah.
So every one of these shows that we go to, and we do expos, the classic, Red Crest, all over Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, whatever we do, and I meet another task force guy, somebody that's been in the military, instantly, they're a brother or sister in arms. We got something in common, and that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. So I just wanted to say that, and to take all that camaraderie and cooking food with each other and hanging out, in the evenings after filming, man, that's the most part I'm proud of, is getting to know the guys.
That's awesome, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. The culmination of this event, of course, the tangible thing is the trophy and being, the champions. But you can't replace the connections and brotherhood and camaraderie that, I met Brent, and immediately we were connected, and we level set it, and now I know. I can call Brent anytime, be like, hey, I got a question about the state, or what do you think about this, and that'll be there forever, as well as all the other guys. Guys are still reaching out, that I met down there in February, and just touching base and saying, hey, how you doing? Matter of fact, a couple weeks ago, Mike was having a hard time watching the episodes. So I gave him my login account so he can stream it, so him and his family can do that. And it's that immediate camaraderie and brotherhood that is a continuation of our service, and it's just irreplaceable. It's so important for that not to be lost. This event was to crown a champion, of course, and that's amazing, and that can never be taken away. But the organization is so much more and so much bigger, and you guys went into the follow on with the paralyzed veterans. It's just another example of what this organization stands for, and what it's doing for veterans of all kinds. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and Brent, I'll continue to say thank you for as long as I live for you, buddy.
Yeah, man. I got lucky. And got paired up with Matt. And like you said earlier, Sean, man, some people just gel. And every good field artilleryman needs an awesome intel guy, and he was that dude for me. So yeah, it worked out. And man, we become really good friends, and that's part of it. That's probably the best part of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So as Matt mentioned, we got the PVA episode this week, and then the next two episodes will be Fishing for Freedom down at Lake Belt, and some of the stuff of us getting disabled veterans out on the water, and just some active duty shoulders. Pretty cool stuff that we're doing. We'd be remiss with the area of this podcast that we didn't say, a special reminder that this is Memorial Day weekend. And for us, we typically don't say Happy Memorial Day because we understand particularly the sacrifice that went in. And Memorial Day is remembering those that paid the ultimate sacrifice. I know Brent we worked with our partners at Lawrence, and we're doing a special collaboration for Memorial Day to help remind people what Memorial Day is really about, those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. So when you see those flags at half-mast on Memorial Day and you see those gold stars, that's what Memorial Day is all about. If you want to know more about Army bass, buck, hog, duck, or redfish, go to forceonforcetv.com, and we'll see you next time. Cool.
Thanks for listening to the Force on Force podcast. Join us next time as we dive into more topics from the Force on Force talk. For more information or to learn how to join the organization, visit our website at forceonforcetv.com.